like to thank the chair of the committee of this conference, Dr. UAD, and also to the Master Ceremony Muhammad Ali, and also thank you to all of the committee at this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us open this Islamic conference by saying Basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
I'd like to invite Mr. Auda and also the of Islamic thought, Mr. Ahmad, accompany the Vice Rector to hit the gong as the symbol of the opening of this conference. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, by the opening remarks from the Vice Rector of Universitas Dahlan Yogyakarta means that we may start and continue our conference to the next agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the keynote speech, will be delivered by Professor Dr. Jasser Auda. Before I invite him to the podium, I'd like to introduce him. Then Professor Auda is Al-Shatibi Chair of Makassar Studies at International Peace College South Africa, the Executive Director of the Makassar Institute, a global think tank based in London, and a visiting professor of Islamic law at Carleton University in Canada. He is also a founding and board member of the International Union of Muslim Scholars, member of the European Council for Fatwa and Research, Fellow of the Islamic Academy of India, and General Secretary of Yogyakarta Fikr, a popular youth organization in Egypt. Professor Jasser Auda also a PhD in the philosophy of Islamic law from University of Wales in the UK, and a PhD in a system analysis from University of Waterloo in Canada. And his wife memorized the Quran and Islamic Usul and Hadith in the Halakas of Al-Azhar Mosque in Cairo. He previously worked as founding director of the Makassar Center in the Philosophy of Islamic Law in London, founding deputy director of the Center of Islamic Ethics in Doha, professor at the University of Waterloo in Canada, Alexandria University in Egypt, Islam University of Novi Pazar in Yogyakarta Faculty of Islamic Studies, and the American University of Sharjah. He lectured and trained on Islam, its law, spirituality, and ethics in dozens of other universities and organizations around the world. He wrote 25 books in Arabic and English, some of which were translated to 25 languages. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Dr. Jasser Auda to give a speech under the title Makassar Syariah, Theoretical Views and Paradigm. Professor Dr. Jasser Auda, time is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah hamdan tayyiban katsiran mubarakan fihi mubarakan alayhi kama yuhibbu rabbuna wa yarda. كما ينبغي لجلال وجهه وعظيم سلطانه. الصلاة والسلام على أسعد الخلق وخاتم الرسل محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه والتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. I was told that the language of the seminar is in English, and that is why I will, inshallah, speak in English and do my best to address the topic in English. I think, though, that the first item that we need to think about in terms of the Islamic contribution should be the issue of language. Yes, I know I'm speaking English, but the issue of language is essential in the contribution of Muslims to the world. When you speak a language, you carry its philosophy, you use its concepts, and you are already operating within a particular paradigm when you use the English language, let's say, or the French language, or European languages. And therefore, I think the first point, before even addressing the issue, is that I advise and I encourage the revival of the Arabic language in Indonesia in general, and in your Islamic university in particular. When I went to Canada, I did not speak English. That was almost 30 years ago. I migrated there from Egypt. And it's a matter of time that you learn the language and you perfect the language when you use the language. Now, as my brothers mentioned, I teach in English and I write in English. But the language of Islam, my brothers and sisters, is Arabic. And as an Arab, I would say that Arabs are also far from Arabic. In the Arab world, we do not speak Arabic. I grew up in Egypt. We don't really speak Arabic. We speak Egyptian, which is deformed Arabic. It's not good Arabic. And it carries a lot of the colonizers' terms. We were colonized by the British. There is a lot of terms that we use in Arabic, and especially when it comes to the real world. When we talk about the human crisis, and we talk about health, or medicine, or economics, or politics, or the environment, we are talking in English. And when you study, even in the Islamic universities, if you study engineering or medicine or law in Al-Azhar, you actually study from textbooks that were not written in Arabic, yes, translated to Arabic, but they come with a lot of philosophy and a lot of concepts, mafahim, that are not Islamic. And therefore, my brother read in the Quran, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. This ummah has a task to call for, oh mashallah, there's a translation, alhamdulillah. Because I lecture all the time, so I feel that sometimes people are disconnected. So alhamdulillah, there is Jazakallah khair. So this ummah has a task of calling people, making da'wah to al-khayr. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that verse did not say, وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى اللَّهِ. He said, يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. In Islam, we have da'wah ila Allah. You call people for Allah, you believe in one God, Muhammad. And we have da'wah ila al-khayr, to call people to the good. This is also our task. The good is not the task of the West or the East. It's not the mission of the Americans or the Chinese. The good is the mission of the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They define what is good, and they call for what is good. The problem is that we have a crisis, a human crisis of good in all aspects of knowledge. Because knowledge is not defined by Muslims. Knowledge is defined by others. And if you look at different areas of knowledge, you will find that there is a deep moral and faith crisis. There is the human crisis is a faith crisis. And it is a moral crisis. أزمة إيمانية وأخلاقية. The Iman has an issue with humanity today. Muslims have their Iman in a very superficial way, and it is not applied to the real life. And non-Muslims do not have Iman anyway, and they follow their material gods. They worship the dollar, they worship the church, they worship something that is not what brings morality and akhlaq as Islam understands it. If you look at the economics of today, the economics of today have a crisis of the top 1%. The top 1% of the economic ladder everywhere, whether you're talking about America or the Arab world or Southeast Asia, there's a top 1% that has monopoly, ihtikar in Arabic, to the fortunes and the wealth and the businesses. And the bottom 90% are working for that top 1%. And the bottom 90%, they pay usury, they pay riba for the top 1%. The top 1% owns the banks and the businesses and the wealth. And if you would like to have a business or make anything that needs money, you will need to get the support of that elite, the economic elite. And the economic elite does not give support fi sabilillah. The economic elite gives support in order for you to pay them back. And that happens with nations and with individuals and businesses. The big nations give money for the developing nations in order for the developing nations to pay the big nations riba or interest. After a few years, most of what you pay back to the developed world and to the world banks and these nice organizations, what you pay back is mostly usury. Riba is the interest on what you borrow. And you end up in a cycle of working really hard just to pay the interest for what you borrow. Individually, it's the same thing. In order for you to feed your family and to have a life, you work really hard for a month. And then you get paid at the end just to pay your bills. The bills go to the growth of the big companies, the 1%. And the 1% grows and grows. And exactly as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. So that, an English translation would be, so that the wealth does not circulate only amongst the rich. The economic crisis of today is that there is a dula بين الأغنياء منكم. The wealth only circulates amongst the rich. Circulates amongst the rich countries in those nation states that we have today, and then those strong nation states make the weaker nation states borrow their wealth. And if they have any surplus, they sell to them some weapons and some old technology and so forth. So we have an economic crisis because the basis of the world economy is not based on justice. That is the Islamic basis. The economy from the Islamic perspective is based on the human equality. And yes, in Islam you could be rich and you could be poor, but the gap between the rich and the poor is not as we see today, where there is a top 1%, mostly 5%, that owns the rest of the 100%. That is not Islamic, and that requires a deep change in the system of economy of the world today. That deep change, if we want to talk in practical terms, could start with some Muslim nations that decide to go beyond riba, to get rid of riba. This is going to be very challenging,